Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet.
This review covers the 2013 release of the long-nosed Mustang funny car with MPC's Hot Rod Magazine license. Now it's a 125 scale kit from MPC number 801, and it's rated a skill level 2 for intermediate builders. That's a little generous considering the larger decals and small parts. Now back in the late 60s and 70s, some of the most exciting cars at the drag strip were the nitro-powered funny cars. While the outer bodies were different, the chassis were similar. They had tube frames and usually held a monstrous 426 Hemi engine capable of 7-second quarter miles with speeds up to 250 miles an hour. All the cars ran fiberglass body designs that mimicked stock-style street cars. This out-of-production kit can still be found at online auction and retail sites, and it has 91 pieces molded in white, black, clear, chrome, and has vinyl tires with a metal axle. There's a great-looking full sheet of high-quality decals, too. Now, the body represents a 71 to 73 Mustang, and it's pretty faithful to the real funny cars. Now, it's a nicely detailed engine in this kit, 22 pieces of Hemi power. Now, the interior includes a nice cockpit, and overall, when you're done, the dimensions are 7.5 inches long, 2.5 inches wide, and 2 inches high. Here are the decals for the kit. As you can see, they're very colorful, and they'll turn your car into a real attention getter when you put it on your shelf. So ride along and we'll show you how to put it all together. Stop in to one of Ryder's 2 convenient Michigan locations where you'll find a full range of the latest hobby products, supplies, parts, tools, and paint. We'll start construction with the tires and wheels, and in this kit the slicks are very nicely done. They've got Tampo printed Goodyear side markers, and the skinnies up front have a nice tread pattern. The rear tires can be assembled, so paint the rim backs aluminum, and give it a kind of a worn look, go ahead and press and roll the tire on some 220 grit sandpaper to kind of scuff up the tread area. Add the front rim to the tire, and then add the rim back to the other side, and just press them together. The skinnies that go up front have a choice of wheels, so you can make that choice, and then they're assembled basically the same as the rears by sandwiching the inner and outers into the tire. Now, and keep in mind now that you have to scrape off the chrome plating, or paint for that matter, if you want the glue to stick to the parts. You'll need to do that prior to assembly of these front wheels, and they are put together just like the backs. You just squeeze the inner and outers from into each other through the tires, and then when you're done, and once again, give it a scuff just like the rears, and get the tread a little bit dusty to look like it's been on the road. Let's work with the engine now, and you can see the parts here that you'll need to put that together, the basic engine portion. And the parts for the motor include the valve covers, and they are chrome in this kit, which kind of makes this engine and maybe the whole unit more of a show car, which was often done to funny cars after they had kind of completed their racing days. So go ahead and assemble the blockheads and motor front, and I painted it orange, as in Chrysler Hemi orange, although for the most part these motors were black, flat black, and even the valve covers for these were usually a kind of a semi-gloss black. And now add the oil pan to the bottom and assemble the blower with the front and back. The bug catcher there, it's assembled and added to the top, and attach that unit onto the top of the motor there, and add the belt in place with the fuel pump on the motor's front, and then add the valve covers and the vents. I decided to add an aftermarket wiring kit to this motor because once the body is tipped up, it is fully on display. So to give it a little more realism, I went ahead to install that, and using a Hemi wiring diagram, I wired the motor. And first I drilled the hole out for the distributor shaft, Then I painted that steel and installed it with some super glue. Now super glue the cap with the wires onto the shaft and drill out the locations on the valve covers. Now cut a small part of the black wire boots and slide them onto each wire, and then match the wires up to the diagram and cut them to fit. Slide each wire into place with the boot at the hole to make it look correct, and then super glue all the wires into position. Add the coil to the center wire and with it cut off and sitting behind the blower. Now paint the strap on the coil silver. Let's start the work on the interior tub, so go ahead and gather the parts that you see here and paint the tub aluminum with a flat black seat and some red seat belts. Next, the head cage can be assembled and painted aluminum with flat black padding. The steering arms aluminum and the gauges can be painted black with white dials, or locate and use some non-supplied decals, maybe even print them off from the internet. Then put them into decal paper and you've got a set. Install the shifter and the brake levers into the tub and assemble the gauges, steering arm and wheel, and attach that to the hub, and then add the head cage to the sides. The chassis is up next, so start that and the front suspension, gather up the parts and assemble the chassis and the front springs, assemble the tank to it and install that, and paint this unit aluminum. The springs are steel colored, and add the caps to the fuel tank. And then use some super glue and install the front suspension. It's all pretty straightforward and nicely done with the one-piece frame. Now the tie rod and the radius rods get added, and add the wheels into place and glue the hub cover only into place so that the wheels will rotate. Here is what your front suspension will look like when it's assembled, but if you have some questions about it, the instructions are located at the end of the review if you want to take a close-up look at the assembly pieces and sequence. Let's tackle the rear suspension now. So you see the pieces, gather those here, and then paint the axles aluminum and attach to the gear house. Now add the gear cover. Then the brake calipers, they go into position and they're copper colored. Install the axle into place by carefully spreading the rear frame and sliding it into position. On the outside of the frame, add the calipers to the axle and then insert the metal axle into one of the rims. Now add the brake in place and then insert it through the axle. On the other side, add the brake and the other tire and squeeze them together. Now we'll finish up that tub by painting the side panels black, or actually they come as black, so you can leave them unpainted if you prefer. Then install the interior panels into place and add the gas pedal there and attach the side panels to the frame. And paint the wheelie bars aluminum and install those into place on the axles. Now we can gather up these parts and install those along with the motor, and the transmission gets put into position after you locate the motor on its mounts. By the way, use some strong glue there, some super glue or epoxy, to make sure that it's stable and also that it's vertical. Make sure that it's setting in there properly. And then you can go ahead. The headers, the transmission is painted steel color and the headers are the same. Also attach the steering linkage now to the front axle and add the coupler to it and the steering bar. Now attach the transmission and headers to the motor and put them into position again with some strong glue and inside in the frame so that they look proper from the front end. Take a view of that and make sure they are symmetrical. And so here's where your build should stand at this point. As you can see, we've got a completed rolling chassis. So just set it aside for a little while and let it dry and all the glue to set in the parts into position. Go ahead and grab the body and we'll start prepping that for paint. And you can see there's a pretty strong mold line along the rear quarter panel just after the C-pillar there. And you're going to need to clean that up. So, sand it smooth, scrape it smooth and sand it smooth so that it looks really nice. Then wet sand the whole body with some light grit paper, maybe an 800 grit is good with a light touch. And then you're ready to add your primer coat. Prime the body inside and out completely with a nice, good quality primer. then let it cure. And once it's dry, wet sand the body with some 800 grit paper and look for any imperfections that still need some attention. And get it ready for the base coat color. Next, if you're following the box art build for this kit, paint it a nice classic white or a bright white to get it ready for decals. But let it dry thoroughly. Depending on how long that should take will be determined by your ambient surroundings. And go ahead and let that cure, and when it's fully cured, we'll get it ready for decals. The decals are extensive, and in some cases you may want to cut them and then reassemble them into position. But if you're very careful, you can put them into place by simply using plenty of water to locate them and float them into position. Then pin them down and smooth out any air, water, or bubbles with a soft cloth or a tissue to put them into place. And then you might find it most useful to use some setting solution to get them to adhere, and contours would be more prominent, like panel lines, if you use some of that. It's time to install the windows, and I use a preparation for making them look thinner and crisper and more clear by dipping them into some floor care product. It's had various names, but this is the one that I still have because it lasts a long time. But you'll still find it in stores under different names. And go ahead and dip it in there and then wick off any excess and then let it dry in a fairly dust-free environment by covering it up. Next, add it to the body and then use some white glue to glue it into position. We can install the inner panels now for the body, and they get painted aluminum, and when they're dry, we'll add them into position along with the fire extinguishers to the upper side and then install the panel behind that. Install the back panel as well. Let's work with the parachutes now, and there's two styles, and I chose to use the closed chutes as opposed to the open chutes, but there are instructions in the directions there that show you how to plumb those up with the wire cables and install those. And they're interesting. You may want to do that. In most cases, the open chutes are usually pretty colorful. Now, I went ahead and added the chutes to the back end of the rear frame there and finished it up. Now it's time to add the body to the chassis, and there are some pins in the rear panel, and they attach through holes in the rear frame. So you basically squeeze those into position lightly and get them to snap into place, and you've got your body on your frame now. Well, there you have it. Your model is complete. As you can see from the back end here, it's looking pretty good too. But I have to say, in my opinion, the best way to display a funny car is to use the prop rod and show off that massive motor. So go ahead, flip up the body and show off your work. As you can see, it's going to be a real head turner. Even with the body up, you can still see all the decals and contours of the body and shape, etc., even with that position. Well, no matter what angle you look at this model from, it's sure to elicit some excitement in your soul. Just like the old days when funny cars were new and you could just about go to any of your local strips and see them, because they were very popular back in the late 60s and early 70s, and well, they still are now, but they have a different vibe. Back then, even your moderate builders could come up with something that would be akin to a funny car and give it a run. But this model, it just really has all the right cues to it. The beautiful contrasting hot rod stripes on the white, and the black zoomies there, nice looking wheels. It's an easy kit to build for the most part, with the exception of those great big decals, and those would require a little bit of patience and caution and lots of warm water. But once you get it done, it's a real head turner to put on your shelf. So if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. Well, we hope you liked this step-by-step premium model kit review. And so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking on the icon in the lower right of any of our reviews, and you can find us on Facebook or our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.